Hi, my name is Parisa, and I am a high school science teacher. Today I will be presenting on the topic of teacher professional learning in the context of current issues in literature. Denham 2016 stated that teachers' professional learning is central to the success of teaching, student learning, and effective schools. Yet a collective understanding of what effective teacher professional learning even is has yet to be established amongst most educational stakeholders. Traditionally, professional learning has been viewed as linear, reflective of a teacher's career stage. So, pre-service education, ad hoc external development programs, informal professional learning, and formal in-service courses. But this traditional view is still relatively widespread, and though teachers are conscious of the fact that we need more, the view of what that is met with a broad range of often conflicting personal opinions, superficial consultations, and ultimately a range of vague answers. However, building literature is emphasizing the importance of a focus on what students need in effective professional learning. And though this is a concept that I've heard spoken about in the last few years of being a teacher, I have rarely seen it acted on. And the question then rises, how do we develop a clear understanding of the importance of student-based professional learning to a point that will result in a shift in practice? Today, I will be exploring this question in the lens of the current literature, in regards to current issues and challenges that I have observed, and moving forward, how we can contribute to an evolving framework that answers the question. Growing literature and a body of evidence clearly suggests that professional learning is not effective in improving student outcomes without a focus on students' knowledge and skills. Timperley, 2008, showed that the most effective approach to professional learning involved teachers engaging in cycles of inquiry that began with what students need to know and do to meet curricular and other goals valued by their community. Later, this was again emphasized when Robertson and Timperley in 2011 stated that to have an impact on student outcomes, the inquiry cycle needs to begin and end with the student. As teachers, we know that our work is highly contextualized, based on each school, each classroom, and each student. So when we are trying to improve our work, improve our practice, it makes sense to focus on these contextualized needs, no? This connects easily with the need for a professional learning community as described by Denham 2016. This is a space made up of people who share a common purpose, collaborate to draw on individual strengths, and actively promote learning opportunities. Dufour, in 2004, also explores this concept and suggests that for a professional learning community to be established, it requires the school staff to focus on learning rather than teaching, working collaboratively on matters related to learning, and holding themselves accountable for the kind of results that fuel continual improvement. Theoretically, this all sounds great. Creating a professional learning community that focuses on student learning needs alongside the needs of teachers to ultimately create a vibrant and enhanced environment for all. Yet, this concept, while desirable, is still practically vague and ambiguous. And this lack of clarity is often what results in problematic attempts to enforce such an environment, and from personal experience, a return to traditional practices of professional development, many of which lack any evidence to support their effectiveness. Robertson and Timperley clearly state that when professional development focuses on new practices decontextualized from the immediate demands of the classroom, teaching and learning, it is not likely to be translated into that environment. Teachers might find that information interesting, but rarely do they apply it, given the competing and immediate demands of their students and the curriculum to be taught when they return. Now, this is a quote that resonated deeply with me, as this has been most of my experience in my current educational institution. There have been many attempts by changing leadership to improve professional learning spaces, and this lack of contextualized professional learning focused on individual student learning needs is one that stands out. There have been many interesting spaces that have been run by experts or more experienced staff, but none of these have resulted in a change to my teaching and learning activities or instruction. This experience made me realize that the only way that all teachers in my school are improving their practice is through individual initiative or just collegial conversations. Now, of course, these are really important elements in a professional learning community, but what did it say about the school community's understanding of what professional learning spaces should look like? To give credit to the school, however, there has been glimpses of the development of an effective professional community through the school's leadership giving time to individual conversations with teachers to support their professional development plans. Though the plan scaffolds themselves are quite administrative rather than practice-based, the conversation did allow me to deliberate on practical solutions to challenges I was facing in the classroom. This emphasized for me the role that leaders play in supporting the professional learning of teachers. However, the regularity and consistency of such spaces are highly dependent on the time constraints placed upon the leadership team. Time constraints which actually increase daily. However, all of this was just my experience, and so I was interested to find out, what did the others think? As part of my research for this presentation, I asked some of my colleagues about what they felt were some issues in our school's professional learning environment. The response I got from quite a few very experienced teachers was that the biggest issue is not being informed about external PD spaces they could attend. Now, that is the summarized version of their comments, but I realized through these conversations that many teachers still don't understand professional learning beyond the traditional practices of formal external spaces, which focus on teaching rather than learning. So the question then rises, how do we close the gap between growing evidence-based literature and teachers' depth of understanding? In other words, theory and practice. Guskey 2000 suggested that in order to achieve these changes, we need fundamental shifts in thinking about professional development to a more intentional, systematic process of professional learning. Based on my discussion with my colleagues, I find this to be an imperative point. But how? Again, the ambiguity of what this looks like in practice is an issue. We know that leaders need to support and assist teachers to inquire through structured opportunities, but what these opportunities should look like has not been clearly mapped out or understood. I think ultimately school leaders need to develop this understanding through trial and error. They need to observe and support the learning of their teachers through an approach of problem solving and learning rather than compliance. And we need to be asking questions. Literature has raised a few questions that I feel are important to consider and that would contribute to allowing a professional learning community rooted in student-focused, evidence-based professional learning. 1, how have we contributed to existing student outcomes? With whom are we affected? With whom are we connecting and why? What do we already know that we can use to promote better outcomes? And what do we need to learn and to do to promote better outcomes? What sources of evidence and knowledge can we utilize? These are questions that we can integrate daily as teachers, but also as leadership into our conversations. To answer these, as teachers, we need to link inquiry into student profiles of achievement to specific teaching practices. But this is not an easy task. It requires us to unpack our preconceptions about how students learn and how best to teach them. We need to challenge ourselves, become detached from our personal opinions, and allow collaboration and consultation to shape our evolving conceptual framework. There is no easy solution to the problem at hand, but a Herculean effort which will reshape the ingrained habits of thinking and doing over time. Thank you, and I hope that this was useful to you in some way moving forward in your practice.